Good day, everyone. This is Ray Kuhl. I'm CEO of PBSI Technology Solutions. I'd like to welcome you to this webinar series that we are presenting for the Academy of Medicine, our long-term partners and partners of each of you. Today's topic, security essentials in healthcare. We'll move very quickly. We'll be through in 30 minutes, as will be true of each webinar during this webcast. So the goal of this series is to inform and educate, to improve knowledge about electronic security, and to provide practical information about what to change and how to do so. Today's topic, security essentials in healthcare, will be a summary overview that will touch on, but not go into detail on some of the individual topics that we'll cover later on. Some very, very important topics. We'll dive into email security training, really important, valuable content here. We'll talk about file encryption, why it's important, cloud security, public Wi-Fi. We'll talk about Dragon Medical. Any of your providers who are not using Dragon Medical, I encourage you to have somebody attend this webcast and tell them what you find. We'll be doing free training for Academy members. We'll talk about password management, a very difficult topic for all of us, and we have some practical tips that are very useful. Finding unprotected PHI. So in a environment where HIPAA audits are increasing, how can we know that we're prepared and where our data is that might be at risk? Preparing for Windows 7 end of life, another important topic. And then talking about security monitoring. How do we know if our security is working? Many of us have put security in place and we do not know if it is or isn't working successfully. So again, welcome, and I thank our partners at the Academy for having the vision to understand that clients need this kind of information. Hope you'll find this helpful. So we'll talk today about most common threats that we see in a healthcare environment. This comes from a number of sources. Principles of effective cybersecurity protection with a healthcare bent. What we see as the most important elements of defense, and then actions that we might consider taking. So that's our agenda. Some of you are long-term clients of PBSI. Thank you very much. We have decades-long relationships with many groups in the Cincinnati area. PBSI, for those of you who this is your first exposure, provides technology services for hundreds of healthcare providers in Ohio, Kentucky, and Indiana. And throughout the region, we provide high-quality technology services which are discounted for members of the Academy of Medicine as a intentional support for the local community. We're based in Cincinnati, even though we serve practices Louisville, Lexington, Columbus, Indianapolis, Dayton, and surrounding area. So one of the things that's true that helps me as CEO, 75% of our staff have been with PBSI for 10 or more years. We have a lot of really long-term people, and I know that knowledge helps clients. Very blessed to be in an organization where we all share the same mission of helping clients succeed. So our goal and main focus is security monitoring and security services in an IT environment in healthcare. So I'm going to mention this. Every attendee is, quote, the smart person in the room. You understand this is important. You know why we need protection. So I'm not going to go into any detail in a future webinar related to passwords. I will do a dark web exposure check, which is a frightening thing that will identify for any domain or individual email address whether you have exposed passwords out there. And there are 3.1 billion emails exposed. 1.2 billion of them have exposed and cracked passwords that are available for virtually free, very, very low cost for the bad guys out there permitting exploits. So because the world is such a dangerous place, this kind of information really facilitates those who want to hack. So I'll move on from here. In the healthcare environment, recent statistics for a short period of time, OCR reported that in Ohio, Kentucky, and Indiana, the main reported breach types, and understand these are breaches where something has occurred of significance such that a breach needs to be reported. There are all kinds of attacks that will not show up on this list, but the most common, unauthorized access or disclosure of information. Okay, everybody can understand how this might happen, and in some cases this is personal failure and not a technical issue. Hacking incidents, yes, this is a technical issue, and this ranges in all kinds of dangerousness and quantity of exposures, improper disposal of PHI, loss of USB drives or laptops, and theft of devices. So these are some of the most common. Today, we'll mostly focus on how to deal with and prevent the hacking incidents in their various forms. So the most common attacked threats that we see in healthcare: email phishing attacks that lead to exposed passwords and allow movement within an organization. Ransomware attacks, unfortunately, this is a very, very regular thing, and it's very frustrating whenever we see a client with a ransomware attack because they are preventable. We'll talk about a couple of key tools that can, there's no such thing as protection, but largely preventable. And we'll talk about tools that will permit that. Attacks looking for outdated software. This is very, very common, has been for a long time. Most of the major hacks that have been exposed, Experian, the very, very largest healthcare attacks, usually find their way into a network through a piece of software in some obscure place that is out of date. They take advantage of a vulnerability. We'll talk about patch management and why that's so critically important to attend to. So attacks looking for outdated software, internal accidental exposure, loss or theft of laptops or thumb drives, and then attacks increasingly against the Internet of Things. So in medical offices, we have X-ray machines, ultrasound machines, refrigerators that are connected to the Internet, all kinds of devices that we don't think of as IT devices, and yet they have vulnerabilities, and those are increasingly being exploited. So the summary recommendations: have a firewall, protect your laptops, have patches updated on all devices. Obviously, I'm going through this very quickly, but we will touch each of these in some detail at some point over the next coming webinars. Email protection, really important and very inexpensive, really, really key topic that I believe everybody should pay attention to. Customize employee access to not make hackers' jobs easy. Have a current security risk assessment. This is something else we can help with. Again, the purpose of these webcasts is not to sell PBSI services at all. The purpose is help everybody understand where are some areas where we may have a hole or something to address in our security. So have a risk assessment and have a process of remediation. An incident response plan is a requirement by HIPAA, and yet a lot of people feel, well, I'm not really exactly sure exactly what that is. We'll talk about that. Monitoring the Internet of Things, that's our medical devices, having effective policies, and having employees who are trained. These are all key elements, and we'll talk about these in some detail. Similar summary, organizing this in a bit different way. Effective principles begin with isolating our perimeter. We must have a firewall, and the firewall must be set correctly, set to run silent so it doesn't report the status of various things to outside attackers. It's very, very inexpensive to have your firewall set correctly, that it is set securely, but still so many folks say, well, I guess I need a firewall. I buy a firewall, we put it in place, but it's really not doing the job for which it's intended. So protect your perimeter with a bit of hardware and some expertise in setup. Protect your desktop. So here's where every desktop needs antivirus and malware protection. Every desktop needs to be monitored for patch management. This is, again, a very dangerous area where unupdated software patches cause huge security issues and are the source of many, many breaches. Vulnerability scanning, this should be done either hourly or nightly, the kinds of things that are scanned. The point here is that there is very significant and dangerous malware that exists on millions and millions of PCs, and nobody knows that it's there because the quality of scanning that's done, a sleeper Trojan was put in place maybe years ago, hasn't woken up yet, or maybe it's been running the whole time and sending key information about that PC, including logins and passwords. So having effective testing to know that your units really are secure, very important. Email, this is the source, other than unupdated security patches, the source of most successful hacks. So we're going to talk about Office 365 and the $2 a month feature called Advanced Threat Protection that routes every click or attachment opening in an email through a sandbox. This is a $2 a month option added to Office 365, or if you don't have any email protection, You can do this entire thing for $6 a month with Exchange Online and Advanced Threat Protection. $6 per month per email address. And now, instead of a click resulting in ransomware, a click or opening of an attachment simply results in a message that says, that was a mistake, no harm done. Security training, very important. All of us struggle with this. And the reason for the protection tool being of such significance is that 100% success in security training is a goal for all of us, but rarely achieved. Administered and monitor real-time alerts related to hack attempts. Then network monitoring, breach intelligence, online backup. We'll talk about each of these. These are the essential tools. I'm going to talk about the details of some of these. What does it mean to have effective perimeter security? Okay, firewall needs to be set securely with updated security software. Other things that we like to see in a network is to restrict, subdivide the network, and restrict application access and permissions. Most every voice listening to this information knows that HIPAA, one of the tenets, is minimum necessary. So that needs to be applied to network access and permissions, not just within your EHRs, but permissions within your network to get to sensitive documents. And these are simple and inexpensive to do, simply requires the knowledge to set these up. Application passwords so frequently are violated where folks share passwords. So tightening down password permissions and having an intentional review process, and things like disabling network ports that are not in use. These are tools that hackers use. They take advantage of default ports and they take advantage of unused pieces of your network that go unmonitored. So small things can make a big difference. Physical access, this is probably the only time we'll really talk about this, but have a public Wi-Fi. Don't share your wireless passwords with guests. There are all kinds of ramifications of doing that long term. And have a Wi-Fi password that is long. That's to prevent hackers from gaining access. Keeping network and data equipment in a locked area is pretty routine and understood by most. And today, the availability of access control systems where we log in and we log out securely and we have video monitoring going on, it's quite inexpensive. PBSI does a lot of this for clients. And it's a part of the security environment. So you have physical security where cameras and access control prevent unauthorized access to the physical building, but most of what we'll talk about is preventing unauthorized electronic access, much more dangerous for most of us. So perimeter security is one. Endpoint protection. This means desktop, laptops, endpoints are where end users touch our network. Mobile devices, mobile phones, iPads, other connected hardware devices, those are the endpoints. We want to make sure that all software is up to date to prevent patch management failures. I'll talk about this a bit in another webcast. Antivirus, it's critical that we don't use free antivirus. Why are there free versions of antivirus products where there are also for sale versions? Think about that. In a healthcare environment, why would we want to use the free version that lacks some of the features? And frankly, most of the time, not universally, but most of the time, free products make their money by selling access to information. And is that what you want in a healthcare environment, that you've given permission to learn information about your activities and that of all your staff? Vulnerability scanning, this is how we identify there may be something there that got through our previous filtering. Screen settings, okay, this is pretty simple, but we recommend that each PC be set to be always on, so it can be scanned at night, updates can take place at night, but screen settings we configure for automatic screen blanking and screen turn off and auto log off. These are pretty simple things, but they do prevent their effective electronic security settings without causing the hassles of PCs being off at night, not getting their updates and being slow when they're turned on in the morning. User permissions, having effective and intentional restrictions there, and being conscious of remote access. There have been some very famous hacks that took place where a home PC was compromised with a keylogger and the bad guys followed the attacker in. The source code to Microsoft Windows was stolen many years ago now, exactly in this manner. Microsoft employee, again, many years ago, was compromised, and the person had significant access, and so the hacker gained significant access, and important theft was done. If we don't, we know that we have physicians and nurse practitioners and office staff in some cases who access our network remotely. Let's take the simple and inexpensive steps of making sure that the devices they use at home or they use for remote access have updated antivirus and are secure. Quite straightforward, but important. So we've talked about the perimeter, we've talked about PCs, email. So again, I'll cover this topic in significant detail. I won't go into this more today other than to say, use tools that are available on market. And I'm very high. I'm not particularly a Microsoft fan. Don't think that I talk about Office 365 and advanced threat protection because we really like to sell that product. I simply see this feature that prevents damage from clicks as being unique and so important that we're recommending to all clients that they move to this. I don't really like subscription products, but this is inexpensive and very, very important protection. Ask any practice who's ever had a ransomware attack if they could turn back the clock and spend $2 a month to protect, or $6 a month for the full enchilada to protect their practice from having to wonder, should we be reporting a breach? Did our data get stolen? What kind of operational problems have we just encountered because of this ransomware attack? Anyone would go back and spend that $6 a month, do it in advance. Okay, so we'll talk about how to spot dangerous emails in an upcoming webinar. Very important, and we've really accumulated some good information from lots of sources. I'll make sure everybody should know, I believe today in healthcare, that we may not send PHI or EPHI through email unless the data is encrypted. So there's another $2 a month option with Office 365 to permit encryption. These are straightforward, and we recommend discontinuing the use, and many people do it, where our practice administrator or other people in our office use Gmail or Yahoo or at roadrunner.com, net or whatever addresses. Those large providers are they have been attacked and attacked and attacked such that there are millions. In fact, I think I recently did a query and Yahoo had 400 and some million exposed passwords associated with email accounts. And that data remains out there for sale, even though it may have been gathered years ago. Unnecessary compromise by using free email in a work environment. So there are other issues about that we'll get into later. And make sure that we have backup that is completely redundantly protected. So email protection, very important. Access controls. Okay, internal controls. This is both electronic and physical. Make sure every user has a unique account. And I realize that some of you are likely listening to some of this and saying, do you know how many hats I wear in our practice? We have so many healthcare clients. I think we do have a pretty good feel that some of this is, oh my gosh, just take this off my plate, which is why you have somebody like a PBSI, or hopefully you have a trusted IT resource who can just handle some of this stuff for you because it's important, and who has the time or takes the time. So have a unique account for each user, eliminate shared or generic accounts like front desk or MAs, just examples. Password management, I won't talk about here, but it's really important. And password theft and reuse ends up causing huge problems. So I'll just mention access management control is important. So a security risk assessment. This is the first fundamental step with any practice who says, I really don't know if my security is intact. This is a requirement for anybody attesting for what used to be meaningful use, now MIPS. It's a requirement, and we know from experience, so many clients complete their risk assessment and think, yeah, we answered the questions, we really didn't know what some of them meant, and probably wouldn't pass an audit, but we got the job done. So do a real security risk assessment. It's not expensive to do. We do this for a lot of practices, and we also provide free information about how to do your own risk assessment. But basically, you likely already know what you're doing is taking an inventory of where is your data stored, which sometimes is very hard to find, but that includes in email history and Word and Excel and PDF files and billing reports. It's not just on which devices, it's what kind of data and where's that stored. So we have an electronic tool that can find all of this, but it's something where you want to have an inventory. Where do you have risk for having protected information stored? You're going to do an inventory of people and processes. Processes first, where we're looking at policies and business associate agreements and training curriculum, company policies, background checks, whatever our policies are, we need to have them documented, and most of you listening do. Then people, okay, we know what our policies are. Now, how many of our people have actually been through these processes, and how have we documented the fact that each employee went through HIPAA training and password rule coverage and were tested? And again, they're simple and inexpensive tools to assist with this, but we're going to inventory our PHI, our procedures, our people, and then we're going to review technology status and do a gap analysis of what are the missing holes and what do we want to try and attack first. Do we want to do something with our firewall, encrypt our laptops, which, by the way, if you encrypt your laptops, it is a firm defense that if that laptop is stolen, if it's encrypted, you are not liable for any risk of breach. Encryption is a firm defense. So there are some reasons to do some things. Remote access protections, looking at our antivirus and our Windows patch policy and our firewall change policy. These are all things that we want to end up out of our risk assessment with a list of action items. Then we document where our weaknesses are and we start the process of remediation. The most common thing is we do this once a year. Then we do it again another year. And we copy last year's report. And the first time we may have put a sincere effort with a bunch of hours, and then next year it's a copy and paste, and we spent 15 minutes and one person did it sitting at their desk instead of what really needs to happen is interacting with others in the organization. Creating culture of compliance is important, and the most assured way to prevent a successful audit that results in penalties is to really follow the rules and understand them, embrace them. So, security risk assessment. Then incident response plan. This starts with backup to know how we would stay in operation and exactly how long it would take and what our plans would be if we had a disaster of various kinds, and create and maintain disaster recovery plan, which typically would be administered and controlled by your security and privacy officer. But it's important that everybody knows, how do we report an incident? What's the communication process? What's our protocol for what happens if an employee gets an email that they think this might be a bad email? What's our protocol? Who can we forward that to have somebody who really knows look at this and say it's okay to click on this one or it's not okay to click on that one? These are the things that are a part of an effective plan, and they're not difficult, simply important. Okay, and then finally, having policies and employee training in place where people understand their roles and responsibilities, that they're aware that there's a training program for new employees, that we include acceptable use and email use and data protection policies and personal device use and incident reporting. Some of these are just the keys, and we provide free tables of contents and very low cost policies and procedures and security policies and forms. If you're interested, again, these things generally, most of these don't take much money. They simply need to be attended to. So I'm going to do a very short demonstration of a tool we use at PBSI. And again, I'm not trying to sell services. I'm trying to identify, when I talk about online monitoring and somebody managing your network from afar, what's it look like? So on this screen, here are a list of clients. I've selected only PBSI. So when I've selected one client, our dashboard technicians are looking at all clients, all servers, all PCs, and they're looking at the most problematic devices in our entire covered network. In this case, since I've selected PBSI, only the servers at PBSI display over here. So this is the list of our servers, and a technician could say, well, what's going on with this server? What's going on with this server? The purpose of online monitoring is to avoid the need to poke, as I'm doing, let's look at this one, let's look at this one. Instead, the system operates on our red, yellow, green priority scheme where we've set priorities of which things come immediately to the top: a ransomware attack, an active virus, a bunch of failed login attempts that all of a sudden are taking place on servers or PCs at client offices, a failed backup. Some of the things that immediately will jump to the surface because this monitoring is done, personally attended to throughout the business day. As soon as something happens, we're aware of it, and it's very frequent that we will get in touch with the customer and say, hey, what's going on with this PC? And the person doesn't even know that that PC is in use or it's been attacked. So at PBSI, we can see the status of servers, that backups running okay, that failed logins aren't taking place. So there are some physical hardware things, some performance things, and some security things. We know that all software is updated. We can look at PCs, and this is where most of the action is. And in PCs, the PCs at PBSI, I'm going to search just for those that have the name Ray associated. And I'm picking my desktop. So this is the PC in front of which I'm sitting right now. And Ray sitting at his PC can't see this stuff, that there were no failed login attempts or how much free disk space he has, or whether his physical disk is healthy and whether his antivirus is up to date and whether there's any bandwidth issues of uploads or downloads and whether his backup's running correctly. So these are things that security-wise, immediate alerts take place, and we can drill into the status of antivirus or patch updates. So here's a missing patch that automatically, we do this twice a week, so this would automatically be approved if it were Tuesday or Saturday. What hardware and software is installed on Ray's PCs, and so forth. So basically the idea is things are monitored from afar. So that's the end of a demonstration. We can look at a lot of things. Here are the status of backup for each of the last 28 days. The idea that security monitoring can be done. So at PBSI, we discount this further for Academy members, but antivirus, patch management, vulnerability scanning, and online monitoring, $7 a month per PC, including the antivirus. So this doesn't have to be a really expensive thing to have somebody remotely monitoring. Okay, so we're almost finished. I want to summarize the recommended defenses, and I'm going to be specific where when PBSI gets involved for email defense, we want to go to Office 365 because of the advanced threat protection. We're a small business, just like most of our clients are small organizations, and a dollar is worth something. So we tend with solutions that aren't going to be cost prohibitive. We want to make sure that recommended defenses, that we have antivirus and patch management in place, that we have electronic security monitoring in place. Risk intelligence scanning, I haven't mentioned, but I will demonstrate this in an upcoming webinar where we'll see a tool that will find every piece of unencrypted PHI or PII anywhere on our network, and it is found in surprising places. Automatic asset management, online security monitoring, vulnerability scanning, risk assessment, templates and assistance, online monitoring, and cyber policies. This is the set of defenses. So again, I mentioned PBSI as a vendor, but the point of this isn't use PBSI for these things. The point is understand what the elements are. And if we've talked about something today where you're wondering about a specific element that's missing, sign up and register for the upcoming webinar. I want to say that the very next webinar we're doing on June 12th for email security training is among the very most important, because we'll go through the essentials of what an employee needs to learn in order to evaluate email and what kind of protections are available. Really useful content. We spent years developing this information. We update it all the time. So we are finished with today's webcast. I want to thank you for your attendance. And once again, I want to thank our friends and partners at the Academy of Medicine for sponsoring this information. All these webcasts are being recorded, so recordings will be available. Just ask us. We'll send summaries at the end of the series to everybody who's registered. So thank you for your attendance. Be safe online. Hope everybody has a good day.